joined by the one, the only Beverly Mitchell.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you for having me.
How are you? I mean, Special Forces, world's toughest test. I mean, that's an understatement.
I think that they really titled it like perfectly well.
I
Like I
mean, yeah, right?
yeah, I mean I think they really nailed it. They nailed it with the title.
I mean, listen, I was like, right from the start, you're there, and the first task is to like jump out of a helicopter, do a dive backwards,
Not
head
even
first.
jump, we had to fall. Like I think I would have liked jumping. The falling part was the hardest part because you have to trust that you're gonna land correctly.
I would
I
have been
did
out right
I didn't
there.
land correctly. I knocked out six ribs out of place on that first
Wow.
fall.
Well, listen, like you're an accomplished actress, singer, you played a heightened version of yourself on TV before. Like, what drew you? Why? Like, what drew you to the show?
You know what? Initially, like one, I thought they like made a mistake when they called me. Um, and I was so shocked because I just didn't feel like this was, I'm like, this is not what do do they know what I've done? Like, is there someone else that has my name? Like, what? Um, but then when I really started to think about it, I was like, wow, like this is a challenge that most people will never get in their life. And I knew that I needed kind of like a shakeup. And this was that. This was that shakeup.
When you got the call where you're like, have you watched Seventh Heaven? Hello.
I know I did ask my manager and I was like for sure like it was me. Like, did you and he's like there's so many Beverly Mitchells. I'm like, I know, but I'm just really confused. Like I just don't feel like this is like my al and especially once we weren't supposed to know who was like part of the cast, but I'm kind of like the super sleuth. So like I was starting to figure out most of the cast members and I was putting it together. So when we all landed in Jordan and I was starting to like figure out like who the full cast was, I was like, I do not belong here. Like this is I do not belong. Like this, should not be here.
How did you super sleuth? Like, what were you doing?
Oh, I was taking cues. I was like paying attention. I was watching things. Um I was taking notes from people like who had flown in because like some of us would see each other in the airport. And then others like never did, but we knew that there were other hand like I mean, I was busy. I was so busy trying to figure it out.
There were so many people there that are just that have their own place in pop culture history, like you, and like we have Kenya Moore and like Mel B, Dr. Drew, like who, like you're in the business. Like I'm sure like we all have preconceived notions of so many different people that we saw on TV. Like, was there anyone that shocked you just as far as like, wow, this person is so different than, my own preconceived backstory that I made up about them?
Um, I really tried to kind of go in open-minded, but I mean, I was pleasantly surprised at how grounded and how down to earth Mel B is. She was like she was literally like Mama Mel. She was making sure everyone was taken care of. She was always on top of it. She was everyone's biggest supporter. She was just so filled with love, like where I felt like, with her career, like she easily could have been a little bit more pulled back, and especially with her history, like, but she was so wonderful and just like, the glue for those first few days. Like, she was incredible. Like I can't say enough amazing things about Mel. Like we were literally like crying. Everybody was crying when Mel left. We're like, no, please don't go.
Well, she did take herself out, and like Kate Goslin and Dr. Drew got eliminated for physical, and like Jamie Lynn Spears took herself out. Like, are you proud of how far you got, like the eighth to leave, even though you left on your own? Like, do you regret that? Do you regret anything from
You
this
know,
experience?
I I've talked to Carly a lot about it because Carly and I still talk quite often, and I was really bummed out. I did not want to leave. And even though, and I was bummed that it like kind of ended up being me leaving, like me pulling myself out. But the reality was like my body was starting to quit. And even though my mind wanted to push on, like my body had other ideas. Like I genuinely at that point, like could not figure out where my feet were. Um, and and it was also in that realization too that as these tasks got harder, I was becoming dead weight. I was holding back my team. And it wasn't like, especially on that day, it was everything was team effort. And yes, could Dwight have thrown me over his shoulder and carried me up the fucking mountain? Oops.
You can swear.
I did
I
not
have
mean
I
to
have a
swear.
horrible mouth, so it's okay.
But like, could he have done that? Yeah, he could have. But the reality was like, I also didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be able to like, because I mean, you even see in the clip, like, I've got my backpack on and I try to go pick up 2 gas cans. Like I was trying, like I was giving it my all. I mean, I should have gone for the shovel, but I was going for the heavy stuff. And I am bummed and I do wish I went a little bit further, but Carly has been so sweet and so supportive. And she's like, Bev, you were done. You went farther than any of us thought you were going to go. You were done. And I love you, but you were done, done, done. Like, be proud, walk away. You're good.
And you even got some sympathy from, the staff too. Like I felt
Yeah.
your elimination was, they gave you some words of encouragement.
Well, and I think to be honest, I think at that point, like Foxy was not going to let me continue. He was like, you're like, we're in a, and they did say this, and we've, they all said like, we never wanted to let you get into a place where you were going to do harm to yourself. And I was on that border. That's where I was going. And I still talk to a lot of the DS as well. And I talked to Billy yesterday because I was stressed about the show airing. And Billy even said, he goes, everyone's journey, it doesn't matter how many days you put in, it's what you take away. And it's been very clear that you've taken a lot away. So your journey was exactly what it should have been. And you did a damn good job. So be proud. And
That's a good
so
point.
it is, and it's been it's wonderful because like now I have this pretty remarkable community that I have behind me, which I'm so grateful for.
That was, well, I mean, listen, you did get into a little bit of drama with Kenya Moore on the Trust Me challenge. You guys worked it out. Like, what was it like? Have you watched Real Housewives of Atlanta?
I have not. So I actually wasn't really familiar with like the history of how she is. It was but by the way, I didn't need to know that because you can kind of get it off the, right when you walk into a room. And obviously with 16 people, like everyone has different personalities. Like some are gonna, and it would be a very strange thing if all 16 of us were perfectly like kumbaya and we were all great and gravy. Like it's not going to happen. That's not the real world. So obviously there's personality types that like might clash, and Kenya and I we were oil and water. We did not see things the same way. But that didn't mean that we didn't have respect for one another. And when I was so upset with the trust me stuff was not actually about me not trusting Kenya. It was about, I was terrified that I would hurt her and that I would be responsible for doing harm to one of my recruits. None of those tears were about me. It was 100% about her, and not because I was mad at her. It was because I truly wanted nothing bad to happen to her. And Kenya's much larger than I am. And so I was very confused at how my physical being was going to stop her from, coming down. And wasn't trusting that. And that was a very, very, very scary scenario for me.
Well, good thing you didn't see Real Housewives of Atlanta, because when I see Kenya Moore coming, the wrath of her, I would just duck. So that was a very,
I can see that now.
well, look,